In May 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson's life took a tragic and bewildering turn. A seemingly ordinary night out celebrating the end of the school year would mark the beginning of an unrelenting mystery that still haunts his family, friends, and the community of Lind, Minnesota. After his car got stuck in a ditch on a dark, rural road, Brandon made a call to his parents, a call that would become the last known contact anyone had with him. What followed in the hours, days, and years after that phone call is a haunting and perplexing tale of confusion, speculation, and unanswered questions. Despite extensive searches and numerous theories, Brandon Swanson's disappearance remains one of the most baffling cases in Minnesota's history. In this story, we will explore the timeline of events, the search for answers, and the ongoing mystery surrounding the young man's sudden vanishing. What happened to Brandon that night? The truth is still out there, but with each passing year, the questions only seem to grow. Chapter 1. The Beginning of the Mystery. On the night of May 14, 2008, Brandon Swanson, a 19-year-old college student, was driving home to Marshall, Minnesota, after celebrating the end of the school year with friends. As he drove through the rural roads of Lind, his car became stuck in a ditch. Frustrated but not panicked, Brandon called his parents to let them know he was in trouble. He assured them he was fine, just stuck, and would walk to a nearby town to get help. Brandon mentioned his location, and his parents, worried but hopeful, set out to find him. The phone call seemed like a normal distress call, but it would be the last time anyone would hear from Brandon. His parents, Jean and Brian Swanson, arrived at the scene, but to their shock, there was no sign of him. The area was familiar to Brandon. He knew the roads well, but there was no trace of his whereabouts. The search for Brandon Swanson would soon escalate from a minor inconvenience to a baffling mystery that would haunt his family for years to come. On Chapter 2, the call that would change everything. Brandon's phone call to his parents is the key to unraveling the mystery. He had told them he was walking toward the nearby town of Lind, only a few miles away, to seek help. The call, which lasted approximately 47 minutes, was full of distress as Brandon described his situation. During the conversation, Brandon seemed confused, which was uncharacteristic of him. At one point, he suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my God!" before the line went dead. The abrupt end to the call left his parents in a state of confusion and panic. They immediately called him back, but there was no answer. In a state of worry, Jean and Brian Swanson drove to the location he had described, only to find his car still stuck in the ditch, but no sign of Brandon anywhere. Despite the fact that he had been near familiar roads and towns, it was as though he had vanished into thin air. The police were called, and a search effort was launched immediately, but Brandon was nowhere to be found. The one clue that remained was his phone call, which offered some potential leads but ultimately only deepened the mystery surrounding his disappearance. Chapter 3. The Search and the Lack of Evidence. Once the authorities were alerted to Brandon's disappearance, a full-scale search began. Law enforcement officials, as well as volunteers, scoured the area where Brandon had last been seen. They searched nearby fields, wooded areas, and rural roads, hoping to find any evidence that could lead them to Brandon. But despite the extensive search efforts, no concrete evidence was uncovered. His footprints, clothing, or any personal items were nowhere to be found. One of the biggest mysteries was the fact that Brandon had called his parents from a location that was close to a town he was familiar with, yet he somehow disappeared while walking in that area. The searchers did find Brandon's car, which was stuck in a ditch, but no evidence of a struggle or signs that he had been hurt were found in or around the vehicle. It was as though he had just vanished into the night. Some investigators speculated that Brandon had been involved in a car accident, or perhaps wandered off into the surrounding areas in a daze, but the lack of any trace made this theory unlikely. The search continued for weeks, with no success in finding Brandon or any clues to explain his disappearance. Chapter 4: Theories and Speculation. As the weeks and months passed without any sign of Brandon, speculation about his fate ran rampant. One of the most talked about theories was that Brandon had become disoriented after his car got stuck in the ditch. Some suggested that in his distress, he may have wandered off into unfamiliar territory, becoming lost in the dark. This theory seemed plausible given the confusion in his voice during the phone call with his parents. Another possibility that arose was the idea that Brandon may have been the victim of foul play. Could he have been abducted by someone who happened to be passing by? Could the sound of Brandon's voice during the phone call have indicated he was being followed or confronted by someone in the area? Though there was no evidence to support this theory, the idea of foul play was not entirely ruled out. The lack of any signs of struggle, personal items, or even footprints left behind made it difficult to determine if Brandon had wandered off or if something more sinister had happened. Without concrete evidence, every theory seemed just as likely as the next. Chapter 5: The Frustration of the Unknown. As the months turned into years, the frustration of not knowing what happened to Brandon Swanson became more unbearable for his family. Every new lead seemed to fade into nothing, and the investigation was slowly losing momentum. Brandon's parents, devastated by the lack of answers, were left to cope with the emotional toll of their son's disappearance. Each year that passed only seemed to deepen the wound, as the pain of not knowing what happened to their son continued to haunt them. One of the hardest parts for his family was the uncertainty of whether or not they would ever find out the truth. The phone call Brandon made to them was full of emotional highs and lows, but it ended abruptly. No one could say for sure if Brandon had become lost and succumbed to the elements, or if someone had taken him from that area. The frustration of the unknown weighed heavily on everyone involved, and the desire for answers seemed endless. Chapter 6: The Search for Clues continues. Even though the investigation slowed down over time, Brandon's family and friends continued to hold out hope. They maintained a website, social media pages, and attended gatherings to keep their son's case alive. They urged the public to continue looking for any clues or evidence that might lead to Brandon. New tips and reports from local citizens came in periodically, but none of them led to any breakthrough in the case. Despite the lack of progress, the search for Brandon continued. His family worked tirelessly to get the word out, to share flyers, and to keep his case at the forefront of local and national media. They never gave up on their mission to find answers. However, with no new developments or physical evidence found, the mystery of Brandon Swanson's disappearance remained unsolved. Chapter 7: Theories about Brandon's disappearance. As the case went cold, various theories about Brandon's disappearance continued to circulate. Some speculated that Brandon had been drinking or was impaired when he called his parents. Others suggested that he may have suffered from a medical emergency, which led him to become disoriented and wander off. Another theory proposed that Brandon may have encountered someone in the area who had harmful intentions, leading to an abduction. Some speculated that he might have been targeted by a stranger or even a local person who happened to be passing by. However, no substantial evidence supported this idea. There were also discussions about Brandon's possible mental state. Could he have been struggling with something more personal that led to him wandering away from his car and vanishing? But again, there was no clear indication that Brandon was experiencing any mental health issues at the time of his disappearance. Chapter 8: A Cold Case. Brandon Swanson's case remains open but unsolved. While the years continue to pass, his family and friends hold out hope for closure, but there are fewer leads with each passing day. The case has become a cold one, but the mystery still lingers in the hearts of those who loved him and the community that remains haunted by his disappearance. The questions still remain. Where is Brandon Swanson? Was he simply lost and became a victim of the elements? Or was there something darker at play? Every year that passes without answers makes the case more perplexing and difficult to solve. But the hope for answers never fully disappears. Chapter 9: The Ongoing Search. Despite the passage of time, the search for Brandon continues in different ways. His family remains committed to finding the truth, whether that's through public outreach, social media, or continued investigation. They continue to work with law enforcement to uncover any new leads, no matter how small they may seem. His friends and family have vowed to keep Brandon's memory alive, hoping that one day someone will come forward with the crucial piece of information that will solve this mystery. The case of Brandon Swanson remains one of the most perplexing missing person cases in Minnesota's history. His disappearance continues to baffle investigators, his family, and anyone who hears his story. What happened that night remains a mystery, one that refuses to be solved. Brandon Swanson's family holds on to the hope that someday they will find the truth. But with every year that passes, the answers seem increasingly out of reach. The lasting impact of this case is the reminder of how quickly someone can disappear, and how the search for truth, no matter how long it takes, can remain an unyielding journey for those left behind. Brandon Swanson's story remains unresolved, but his family's love for him endures, and they will never stop searching for the truth. Thank you for watching. If you found this story fascinating and want to learn more about other true crime cases, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep questioning the narratives that shape our world.